Hello, Commanders. How are you doing today? Hope you all are doing very well. Today is beginning of territory capture, a new season. So hopefully you all are ready for that, and hopefully you'll be able to at least work on the free track. If you're not a spender, if you are, then maybe you're already at this point. But hopefully you can work on. And this is just not the topic of the video, but I think it's something I need to mention for all of you 50 plus. I know this doesn't apply to the 4-6 range, but I believe this research is only 50 plus, so it is what it is. But don't forget in territory that if you haven't worked your way through here like me, I'm the bad example here because I spend all my free stuff on like whole health, so I guess that helps, right? But as far as the Gorn go, you're going to want to work on this stuff over here. These Delic Doe all the way down and Kurik's Metaphysics Shields all the way down, depending upon if you have a Klingon ship, Federation ship, or Romulan ship. So you want to work on these because it's, I think the thing that's going to really help you if you're 50 plus is getting this isolytic defense up for the Gorn. So that's our new hostile loop that we're working on, right? So it will get easier if you can get more isolytic defense and isolytic damage. Okay, so for the purpose of this video, though, let's hop in. Let's talk about Strange New Worlds Pike. Let's talk about Mbegna. Let's talk about comparing the two. Which one's the better captain, and maybe, which one you should be using, depending on the situation. So for those who don't know, and I'm just going to do a quick review of this. But there's certain officers. Where is Chen? Famous Chen and Talon. We'll just pull up Chen though. So back in the day when the 50 plus was the end game, now it's up to 70. Anyways, Pike Chen was the officer group to have. You could take out significant hostiles, and we can go into detail, but we won't in this video. But the problem that came about that they made it so that Chen only worked, and Chen, I think Pike Chen worked way better, broke the system almost in a way that they didn't anticipate. It's just a fantastic group with abilities and synergy to stop significant amounts of energy damage. So they've come out hostiles that don't work this way anymore too, so that's been an interesting dynamic in the game. But for going above 51, so 51 and under only works here, so 52 plus, they then came out with the original Strange New Worlds crew. Let me scroll down, Strange New Worlds, right there. Okay, so you had Pike, Uhura, Spock, and Ortegas. So let's talk about the differences. Well, let's first talk about, I guess, the officers. Because what people would do is they would take these officers out. You'd have Pike, and you'd have your Uhura, and then you had someone else that would give you full synergy. So let's go through each of these just to kind of talk it through. So Uhura increases your, and this 1800% is because I have her maxed, of attack when attacking hostile battleships from an interceptor. So when you have an interceptor and you're going with a triangle and you're hitting just battleships, she'll give you mitigation. So the weakness with these officers, in my opinion, for a long time was that you had to hit a specific ship type from a specific ship type for it to work. Spock's the same when attacking hostile interceptors from an explorer, so put him on explorers like, say, the Franklin. That was one, or is one still, I guess it still works pretty well. Ortegas is someone I put on my Monavine, for example. Find the Strange New Worlds crew. I usually go with Strange New Worlds Pike, Ortegas, and 511 for loot. But when attacking hostile explorers from a battleship. So when you're on a battleship, hitting explorers. So that was the weakness, right? It allowed you to hit higher level targets, but the complaint or the weakness was always, well, that's fine, but they can only hit one hostile type from a certain, or one type of hostile from a certain type of ship. So let's go over on to Pike. Okay. So now let's compare the two and talk about where kind of the difference is between the two. So you've got these officers and then Pike. Usually, I mean, you'd have Pike typically as a captain, and there are some instances where you wouldn't. For example, freebooters. We can talk about that in a second, but let's talk about his abilities first, and then we'll get into freebooters and things like that. Okay, so Captain's Maneuver when fighting hostiles. Pike increases shield mitigation by 9%. And that is increased by synergy. So when we talk about shield mitigation here, what we're talking about is shield transfer rate. So shield transfer rate or ability, whatever you want to call it. And essentially what that means is that when you're initially hit, right? So the first thing that comes is your mitigation. Max mitigation is around 71%. And so what happens is when you get hit by a hostile, based upon the defenses of your ship or other officer abilities, you're going to mitigate a certain percentage of the damage. And so you always want to try to get around that 71% to what we call max mitigation. Won't go any higher. And then after that, your whatever damage is left will be split between your shields and your hull, where your shield will get 80% of the damage and your hull takes 20%. So somehow it still goes through even though you have shield up. What Pike does is instead of having that 80-20 split, he increases the damage that goes to your shields by whatever percent. So rather than having by himself here, rather than having 80% go to the shields, you'd have 89%. And like I said, you'd increase that by adding synergy with your officers. So the reason why this was a little bit of a problem is that sometimes you'd have to pause between hitting hostiles because you would maybe take more damage, which would then be transferred to the shields, and so you'd want to wait till your shields recharge a little bit before you hit another hostile. Quick thinking, when fighting hostiles, he decreases hostile shield mitigation by 35%. So essentially, he's reducing their ability to have their shields absorb damage, so more will go to the hull. Okay, then comes in our new captain. Butcher of Jagal he increases all mitigation stats by 1,500% of officer health versus non-armada hostiles. And just a quick tip, if you didn't remember, Strange New World Hammer, as a below-deck officer, will actually increase the health of officers on the ship. So you can actually increase the effectiveness of your mitigation if you're not quite there with Mbegna, okay? So just a quick tip. Okay, so the advantage of this one right here is that it doesn't depend what ship you're on or what ship type you're hitting. He's going to give you mitigation no matter what. So it will work regardless of what ship that you're on or what ship you're hitting. Okay, sorry about that. Fight for peace. He's increased your shield hit points every round based upon the percentage. So one place I see that this might be helpful is on if, for example, you're hitting a hostile, like let's say I'm taking my Monavine out and I have Strange New World's Pike as a captain and I have Ortegas on the side as an officer, I could put Mbegna on as the other officer, and even though Pike is transferring a certain percentage to the shields, Mbegna is going to increase your shield, so you might not have as much shields that you need to wait to recharge. And even though he's a captain, he'll still give maybe not max or your most synergy that you can get, because Pike is also a captain. But it's definitely something to consider if you don't want to have to pause between hostiles, and that's something that you're dealing with the hostiles that you're hitting. So, so that's interesting. Which one's better? Well, a lot of people are talking about a couple of different ways that they have found to use Mbegna. I would suggest the Monavine is one of them. One of the big ones that people have found is hitting freebooters. So when you're hitting freebooters, one thing I have done, or when I first started, let's say I was hitting battleships. Okay, so this is a crew that you may want to, that I originally considered, I should say, when I'm hitting battleships for an interceptor, but I had to hit just battleships. Okay, So you go out, you'd hit battleships with your interceptor and collect parts or do your hostile grinding. Something I started doing was this. And I've told people every chance I've got, I've told people in my alliance, is I would put this crew setup. And if you don't have Giorgio, if she's not matched, you can put Nero if he's a higher level tier and he's have a higher chance to proc or to have his ability trigger burnings, because that will trigger Tile's ability, which for those just as a comprehensive, whenever it's burning, is going to take a certain percentage of whole health every round from the hostile. So what I started doing is I would take 511, which will give you mitigation and loot bonuses, and I would take 511 out and I would just hit hostiles. It didn't matter if it was an explorer, interceptor, or whatnot. Okay, and I would hit just anything. Then I would just get as many parts as I could and help me with my refines, because the parts from X-Borg that's actually pretty good. Okay, depending what level you're hitting. So how does this apply to Mbegna? Well, since he has such a high percentage of mitigation, you might, depending upon the level of your officers and your abilities, because remember 511 is by a certain percentage, in this case 200%, since there's no synergy, of the total health of all officers on the ship. So you might not have as good as officers, and you might not be getting that about 71% max mitigation from the hostiles you're trying to hit. So you could put Mbegna in here. Now you're going to lose the loot bonus, but what if you're hitting a higher level system, able to hit a higher level system, and take out higher level hostiles? You might not have the loot bonus from your officer, but you might have to do some testing here, but you might be able to get more loot from the hostiles, because higher level systems will give you an increased drop per hostile. So that's something you'll have to kind of test out and see what works for you. But that is an option to replace 511 here with Mbegna. Okay. So one other thing, let's discard that. So that's just an option, things that you can consider. I did want to look at some battle logs really quick to kind of talk to you about the difference, or show you how Mbegna really works. Okay. Because I think it's important to at least have kind of a basic understanding here. So we go in here, and by the way, this has kind of been my go-to crew for hitting the Gorn, and I'll kind of talk to you about why and how it compares to Mbegna. But I think ultimately, once we're able to unlock Chapel and Sam Kirk, I think that having them as officers, especially if you can tier up Chapel, I think is going to be a fantastic crew for hitting the Gorn. But we'll have to see about officer sourcing, which I don't think has been great. We talked about that in a recent video, but it's frustrating for the sourcing. So hopefully they come out with something either this month, well, not gonna be this month, maybe next month, for the sourcing. By the way, just a reminder too, I will be probably spending all my event store loot, if they have Nurse Chapel, I'll be spending it all there, because I think she'll be a huge help for the Gorn. So as an example, now we have to think about here that this is not isolytic like defense. We're talking about standard damage, because Mbegna his mitigation is for standard damage. So if we look here, let's pull the calculator really quick. So with this, and as you can see, the Gorn is doing 5.9 million damage there, and then we can see how much we're getting there. So isolytic isn't going to change. That's going to be about the same with these officers. Let me see here. So I'm only mitigating about 20%, and as you can see, if you look at the research, I definitely need to work on my research. So that's where I'm getting hit hard. But there's not a lot I can do with that with the current officers. So if we look at how much I'm mitigating for standard damage, that's a 2,754,932. Yep, divided by 5,909,728. So I'm mitigating about 47% of the standard damage with this crew. One benefit to this crew is that when Janeway procs, she's going to increase your shield mitigation, or how much goes to your shields, by a certain percentage. It's 13% because I have the Doctor on board. Okay, so when that happens, you can see I'm taking a lot less whole health damage. And then when she procs again, I take 0 whole health damage. So that's going to be a difference between using Janeway on this crew setup. I think she's a fantastic officer for hitting the Gorn. Please, if you guys have a better crew, please feel free to post it below in the description or on Discord. I'd love to hear from you all. But compared to, let's go to the top here, doing some crew testing. What I did was I added Mbegna, and I have Janeway and the Doctor. So let's look at a battle log. As you can see, I'm taking about the same amount of isolated damage, so that 20% isn't going to change. However, if, let's see here, we take the standard damage for 193,455 divided by 598,0863, 70%. I'm almost at max mitigation with having him on the board. So he is stopping a significant amount of the damage from the standard damage. But as you can see, I'm going to do that every single round, and I don't have Janeway, who is completely stopping or significantly reducing the amount that actually gets to the hull. So that's kind of the difference there. I think he's going to do a fantastic job with the standard damage, and then we'll have to just kind of work on the isolated defense through artifacts, which there are other artifacts that help with that. Doing the Gorn, just as a reminder, and I apologize this video is getting a little bit long, but just as a reminder that you can actually get some really fantastic stuff from officers, both the Enterprise E officers as well as Voyager officers here, and then getting the artifact pieces here. It's not going to happen overnight, but it's something that you can slowly work on as you are getting more loot and doing your turn-ins. Okay, so that's something that we'll have to work on. One other thing that I wanted to pull up here is I did just a quick test to compare the two and threw it up in Spock's Club. Now, when we compare the two, estimated kills per hull is about half with Mbegna. And I have more, a lot more mitigation, but unlike Janeway, he's not stopping damage. So that's a big impact there. Getting about half the loot there, that makes sense. Total damage, have a little bit more of critical coming from critical percentage, so the damage is higher there. You look at the percent that's mitigated, 70%. The 61.3% is a little misleading because we were looking at just barely, and the standard damage is much different from what we calculated, but we have to consider that this is probably taking a percentage of all damage. So anyways, a lot more hull damage, and it all comes down to Janeway's shield transfer ability. So I still think she's a fantastic officer. I think it will take some testing, but I really do think that there is a good option here to consider when we unlock the rest of the officers. So one last thing I did want to share with you, that I came up with discovered a crew, I should say, that I think may work for some people. So it depends upon the tier of your officers. But let me see here. Where is Harry Mudd? So we'll just review this real quick, and if it works for you, great. If not, then that's fine too. Just wanted to throw this out there. Let's get data back for the isolytic. So I have data because he has a higher percentage than Janeway. He's at 20%. I think she's still 10. So one thing that this can do is it can actually knock out the hostile pretty quick. It's going to be most effective when Mudd procs. So he has a 40% chance to raise shield mitigation to 98% for the first 2 rounds of combat. And he has a chance to double the shots of all weapons of the ship for the first round of combat. So you can do some significant damage and significantly reduce your incoming damage. The problem with this here too is that it's only 40%. You could increase it Let's see, I need for max. All right, let's get out of here and let's go there. Okay, so you could go with max synergy, so you have a much higher chance to raise the shields for the first 2 rounds of combat. And for me, my rounds are only going, like 1 round, so that is actually really helpful. And then there's that chance for increasing the shots. So most effective if you have max synergy here for that to happen. The problem is, where's the isolated damage? Okay, you can put if you have a Voyager officer below deck that can trigger isolate damage for you, then that will be helpful. Having a max chapel below decks could be helpful in this situation, so you're still getting some isolated damage, some good isolated damage, and you're also significantly reducing the damage that's coming in. You're taking out the hostile quicker. So this could be an option without max synergy. This still works pretty good. You won't have the loot bonus. You could think about putting like the MH Doctor below decks. You won't have the loot bonus with this crew, but you may be able to take out more hostiles, or you might be able to go to a higher level system than you're currently going right now. So we'll just kind of take some testing with the ship you have, the hostiles you're trying to hit, and so forth. But this is just one other option that you might want to consider as a potential crew for hitting hostiles. So hopefully this information is helpful. Hopefully it gives you some understanding of how we compare Kirk and Mbegna and some of the crew options and the reason why Mbegna may work or may not work for you yet. But we'll have more videos that will come out to kind of help as we're able to unlock more of the officers and see how that works. So once again, I appreciate each and every one of you. Please feel free to drop your comments below or your questions on Discord. Love to help you out in whatever way I can. And I will be I'm going to start streaming on Thursday nights, probably about 7 or 8 p.m. Eastern time. So watch out for those announcements in Discord. I'd love to hang out with you and learn from you and get better together. So anyways, thank you so much and have a good day.